Okay, so the Naruto Shippuden episode 402, Escape versus Pursuit. Basically, this chapter started to focus on the Koronai's Team 8 and their mishaps, mishaps and adventures of the second part of the tuning exams. They get ambushed by three ninja from the hidden grass. With the one with the really fat guy who was gonna, people were worried were gonna sweat all over their food the night before, and they kind of pair all, like, the pairing, all they each get their members that they pair off to try and fight, and they, in order to draw out another team member, and this happens because Team 8 decides to pretend to accidentally yell out that they need to search for a heaven scroll to draw out any teams with an earth scroll, kind of, or anybody who, or teams that need an earth scroll. But this team from the hidden grass tricks them back, and during the fight, they fight in a way to find out who has the scroll. And once Kiba is exposed to be the holder of the scroll, they, all three of them, attack him together and steal the scroll from him. And then the fat guy decides to burp out some smell sphere jutsu that immobilizes them. Why is it that they have to have a freaking fat guy that uses a smell jutsu? And freaking to immobilize their opponents. Of course, with Kiba and Akamaru being the most affected due to their high sense of smell.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they manage to get back up through sheer willpower alone. And then one of the other guys summons a giant mole, and they ride the mole underground to escape. But that's the escape part of their team. This team also, before they leave, mentions how their specialty is to sneak behind enemy lines, steal an item, and escape. And bring it back. Whereas their opponents are Team 8, who is skilled in tracking in pursuit. Hence the name of the chapter, episode, Escape versus Pursuit. And they pursue them. First, they pursue them using Shino, who planted one of his female bugs on the mole in order to pursue the enemy team. But then the mole surfaces because it noticed the bug and knocks the bug off and runs away again. So then they decide to follow it using the Byakugan, but then they ended up getting led into quicksand, and are seemingly taken out, because of it. But unbeknownst to us, all the various movements that Akamaru was making as he was falling, as he was going, was actually he was marking, using his special marking technique to saturate the sand enough so it would become kind of like, sand at the beach, that you would use to make a sandcastle. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
With his piss. Which which actually doesn't sound weird, just because of what I've been reading in Toriko. But anyway, so they managed to escape, and now they're out. The enemy team is now out of Hinata's vision, and just in time for the end of the episode, Kiba's sense of smell has finally returned, and now they're going to use their sense of smell to track the ninja down, and not only get back the scroll they had, their Earth scroll back, but steal the other team's Heaven scroll. Now, this episode was, it was good because it showcased that, a strategic thinking. You know, one team had a good plan to draw out other teams that might have the scroll they need, whereas the other team was very skillful in their and how they battled their opponents in order to quickly find which person was holding the scroll and to quickly obtain it and leave. Since they don't actually have to fight anybody, they just have to get the scroll from them and get to the checkpoint. So we also got to see the various pursuing techniques of the Team 8. But, you know, as now we still have next week's episode is referred to as Unwavering Gutsiness, which is probably, and I hope so, most likely going to be the fight between these two teams where, you know, Team 8's going to probably end up winning and then being able to move on. And then we're probably going to then move on to focus on the other team, you know, the makeshift Team 10, which would be good because, you know, I don't want this arc's already going on long enough. I mean, we still haven't, you know, I mean, we're not done the second part of the shooting exams. We still need to get to the third part, the final tests, which may or may not even happen because I don't even know how they're going to deal with, you know, the tuning exams after the second part. So who knows? But overall, I think it was a pretty good, pretty decent episode. You know, wasn't as action packed as last week's episode, but it was interesting for its intelligent use, for the characters' intelligent use of their various skills to try and outwit their opponents, which is, you know, which like the heavy taijutsu, action-packed taijutsu fight of last week's episode, actually one of the many things that people really love about Naruto. You know, it's just unfortunate that with Naruto Shippuden, it started to become more about the fancy, flashy techniques and less about the, you know, the taijutsu fighting and less about the, you know, intelligent strategizing and use of your techniques or your skills to outwit your opponents.
Mm-hmm.
So this was definitely a nice change of pace which is probably what they're probably doing this again, these parts, because they know that the fandom's pissed about how these, you know, fights have been going on recently with this war, and how they just been seemingly too all about the flash and not about the substance.
Mm-hmm.
So, good episode. You know, and thankfully it has yet to become, even though the pacing's a little slower than I would like it, it still hasn't turned into a bad filler arc yet, at least in my mind.
Good.
So, that was Naruto.